Thousands of faithful mourned at the funeral of Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. Pope Francis saying a prayer as he touched Benedict's coffin. The sight of a current pope presiding over the funeral of his predecessor is certainly historic, something we haven't seen in 600 years. Benedict was the first leader of the Catholic Church to resign in that time frame. He died December 31st at age 95. Joining me right now to talk about the future of the Catholic Church and of course, this funeral, which was simply remarkable. Joseph Capizzi, a theology and religious professor at the Catholic University of America. Thank you for being with us. I know that this was unprecedented. The fact that they were alive at the same time, the fact that they were living together. How did Pope Emeritus Benedict influence Pope Francis?
I think he influenced him the way he influenced most of us, which was with unbelievably profound theological contributions to the life of the church. He also, of course, influenced him just by the model of his humility. Pope Benedict was an extremely humble person and a kind of quiet, reserved person. And I think that humility also is something that he and Pope Francis shared.
How do you think that Pope Francis will lead the church moving forward? I mean, will he carry on any of the tenets or the legacy of Pope Benedict, do you think?
I think Pope Francis will continue with the agenda that we've seen him pursuing, which is an agenda that is largely geared towards the same primary concern that Pope Benedict had, which is to bring people to know God. I think that that is the fundamental charism of both of these papacies, is this sense that without God, human beings really cannot flourish. This was a point that Pope Benedict made in his second encyclical. And I think Pope Francis will just continue to try to bring people to God and God to people.
How significant was this funeral for Catholics around the world?
It's a moment of great communion for Catholics. I think the thing that you see, and you can see it in these images that you guys have been showing, is the diversity of the Catholic population, right? A people that is 1 billion strong, coming from all corners of the globe, unifying around the death of the Pope, the Pope Emeritus. It's a beautiful thing to see, and it really is a symbol of this great unity that 1 billion people who really don't know each other well, aside from their shared faith, can actually possess.
Now, a little history. When Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone denied U.S. Representative Nancy Pelosi, the former House Speaker, from receiving communion because of her support of abortion, Pope Francis made it clear he was opposed to that action. But do you think that, Pope Benedict, he would have made a statement saying that he was in support of that action? I mean, how are conservative Catholic leaders in the church processing how Pope Francis is leading the church?
I think the category of conservatives and liberals just doesn't really apply very well to papacies. Pope Benedict is often sort of understood as a kind of conservative, but if you read his writings, you'll see that he's idiosyncratic in the way that somebody who's moved more by the gospel rather than political categories ought to be. So he's often referred to as the Great Green Pope, because a lot of his writings are deeply focused on ecological concerns about how Catholics and all of us really should care for God's creation, which we typically think of as a kind of liberal perception. So the categories of conservative and liberal just don't really work when we try to apply them to popes.
Yeah. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.